Hello, everyone. Um, Today it was my day off, but I had to work. Today was my day off, and I had to work, so I'm doing this a little bit late, but I'm gonna keep going. Hope everybody's doing good. Um, like I said, I want to thank YouTube. I want to thank all of the people that listen, and I pretty much dedicate this YouTube. I want it either to my family or my mother that passed away. Like I said, she was Jehovah's Witness, but to me, she wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, she had to play the role because her family was in the truth. And I'm going to say truth because I know everybody can switch it. Um, so that's a major reason why I'm doing this for my family. Maybe that they will come to their senses, which I know that this could probably help because I know them very well. I also know how the Jehovah's Witnesses think. Um, so I know how to help them. And I'm sure a lot of people out there also who has done YouTubes know how to speak to them because they were in the religion or they grew up in the religion. So I'm gonna get started. Sorry for starting a little bit late, but that's the way it had to be today. First, I want to clear up some things that from the last YouTube. Um, okay, one thing I wanted to clear up when I said last week about my brother told me to leave the house. Okay, he told me to leave his house, and if you went over the last YouTube, you understand what's happening. I stayed in my car, so I must have stayed in my car for a good week. I was doing construction, and then I would, sleep in my car somewhere. I mean, it was kind of hard, so it was pretty much a street, but at least I had a car. And then I stated that I went to my parents' home where I used to live, and I said it was in the morning, but it must have been early evening, and I knew that they were coming back from a meeting. It's a Thursday meeting or a Friday meeting, I don't know. So I said morning, but it was early evening. And then another thing, which was shocking to me too, when I was doing it, I was like, oh. When I said my car cut off, it cut off because it was on a lease, and the company had some way to where if it's on a lease, I don't know if they did it by satellite or whatever, but the car gets cut off. Um, so I didn't know when that was coming. And then I said to my stepfather, and then I said I don't call him stepfather, but what I do call him is my ex father-in-law, since he's not in connection to he's not in connection to us anymore, or to me, definitely. And then I said he stopped, and then he decided to keep going instead of helping me because my car was stalled, which was a shock. Then after that, I was shocked myself because I was going over this, and I noticed that I didn't have anywhere to go. But now I remember what I did because it was coming back to me. When I knew that they weren't going to come back, I didn't want to go back to the house. I explained why in the other YouTube. What happened was I had to walk. I mean, the only thing it was in a rural area, and I had to walk. I walked about must have been about 6 hours, but I remember even walking now, and again I kept looking at my watch, and I think I walked about 6 hours before, because I knew the area, before I came to a hotel. I think it was a Hilton, and I remember I remember it getting light outside, and then reaching that point, and must have been then around 5 o'clock, and I wanted to take a bus or something, but I had to wait because in the rural areas, the buses don't come like so often until like 7 or something, like 7 or 8. So I went into this whole. This is all area that I'm very familiar with. Maybe a lot of people had seen me also, so I wasn't really like a stranger to the neighborhood. although it was, pretty much populated. It wasn't a really small town. So I stayed in I was sitting, I remember, I walked in the lobby and I was like sitting in this chair and I was like sleeping. And I slept there for maybe 2-3 hours. Nobody said anything. I guess they knew I was having a hard time. And I would wake up every so often, but I pretty much slept there for at least 2 or 3 hours until the buses came. And then the next thing I do remember, the next thing I remember is I was taking a bus. I don't know if it's the same day. It may be or not. I don't know. But it was pretty close. If not that day, it was the next day. So I must have been walking around town and sleeping in places like, the lobbies and stuff like that in a chair. I mean, you know what I mean? But I was dressed pretty well because I was going to go out or something like that, but my car stalled. So anyway, I'm on a bus, and like I said, my brother beeps me, and I said the beeper that I had. I said that it was in 1978, but this is not in 1978. It was 1988 because I got this fellowship in around 1988. So it must have been around June or something like that, May or June, okay? Because it was pretty much nice outside because I could walk outside. And then my brother came and picked me up because he needed help in his business. I explained that in the last YouTube. So after that, we go back, and then this is where it continues, like getting out of the Jehovah Witness cult. So I'm pretty much going back, but before I get into what happens in my brother's house, he does end up kicking me out again. But I had to clear up something else. I said I stayed with a male. I said I stayed with a man that I got in a relationship with, but that didn't happen because I remember I was in the car for about a week, and then my brother, after my car stalled, it must have been that day or the next day to where he called me back. So I was just pretty much by myself that time. So, and then he does kick me out again, and then that's when I go into a relationship, but I have to explain that one in the next YouTube, which I explain about the time I had when I went back to my brother's house, and I explained his situation. So it's my second oldest brother, and my other YouTubes explain about him because it's kind of detailed. Now, before I get into the next YouTube, also, there's people that really mean something to me that I mention and that help me in my struggles with my brother's house, because he's 100% Jehovah Witness, like I said. Although he is disfellowship for doing something, but he wants to get back in. But there's two people that I mentioned that I have to tell you about before I go into that, before I get into about going back to my brother's house. The first one, I think I mentioned him before. I mentioned him. He's a very, very close friend of mine. Oh, I mentioned him in a YouTube where I stated about my ex-wife. She was my wife back then. She had gotten sick. No, after she had gotten sick, and then she got better with the operation, I explained. She wanted to go back to her country. And I stated in the YouTube that I asked her how much money she needed, and she said $800. And I had to get the money. So I called my friend who lived in California at that time, and that's where I got the money from. So this person, I have to call him, I have to use a name because it would get confusing, but I'm going to call him my Spanish brother because we were pretty much like brothers, and he wanted me to call him brother, and I called him brother, not like brother Jehovah Witness brother. We called each other brother, like brother, you know what I mean? Like endearment, okay? So this is my Spanish brother, you know, that we formed this relationship. So there's two people, but this one is very important. I'm gonna call him my Spanish brother. And how I got in contact with, how something, I have to give you some information a little bit about him so you can understand what happens in my brother's house. When I was younger, maybe I was like, maybe 20, I must have been no more than 20 years old. I liked languages and I always studied linguistics. I was studying linguistics, I didn't even know it was linguistics. I didn't know it was linguistics until I went back to college at a very late age. And that put me through college actually, because you have to have courses in order to get your degree. And that gave me some more material to study, credits to get my degree. But I was studying linguistics all the time, okay? So linguistics and language. So I stayed that because I wanted to go, when I was like 20, I wanted to go to the Spanish congregation to know more about languages or to learn how to speak Spanish. So I went on the other side of town. It took me like maybe a good 25 minutes to get to the Spanish congregation. And I would travel there because I wanted to learn a language. So I would go to the Spanish congregation all the time. It was total Spanish. And I was taking courses by myself, but I learned a lot of the language from my friends there. So I was going on Sundays. I had a book study that I would go to, their book study. I wanted to get myself immersed in the language. And I also went to the Sunday meeting, and I would go out and field service. Everything was just like, I devoted my whole life to going to the Spanish congregation. However, it was like a Friday meeting when I walked in, and this brother got up on the stage, and I connected with him as soon as he got up on the stage. Beautiful person. I was attracted, but it was more like a brother first, a brother inside the congregation. And he gave a beautiful talk. I mean, like, it was definitely a good talk, but I was very interested because he was such a good speaker. And after the meeting, I was outside, and he came to talk to me. And he had noticed me just like I had noticed him. He was married. But he didn't speak English hardly at all. But he wanted to let me know that he was interested in me, as a friend. Very, just befriended me, okay? We actually befriended each other. And he invited me to his house, and I accepted it, of course. And days later, I get into his house, and we become like total friends. I mean, we click. I met his wife, I enjoyed his wife. We all got along very well together. And I started helping him with the Spanish. And I was working, actually. I was working in a restaurant. And we were just like, it didn't take long, but everything was him. I mean, I enjoyed him. I was attracted to him, but I had to get to know more, you know what I mean? Plus he was married, okay? So anyway, it wasn't anything about that. It was more like friends, okay? But then after that, it got serious because one time I came to his house because I would work at night, and I would come to visit him early in the morning. I think his wife would go off to work maybe around 7 o'clock. And I would be there. Sometimes I would see her leave. And one time we were sitting down, I was teaching him some English. And I had to go to work, but I didn't want to go to work. It was like really powerful. It was like I didn't want to go to work. I wanted to stay here and talk to my friend, And he was studying, and he told me, I said, I have to go to work pretty soon. He goes, don't go. And I go, but I have to go to work. He goes, don't go work with me. So anyway, I called my boss and I told him, I said, I don't think I can make it, you know. He goes, you have to come in. And I had to make a decision. So I made a decision and I decided to work with my friend. So I can't believe I did it. I would never, that's the way it happened. It's, something that happened. I didn't regret it because I was going to learn something new. So anyway, I couldn't go for some reason. So I didn't go, and I ended up working with my friend. Now it was a very important friend because now my life depends on him as far as as far as working is concerned. So that's just to show you how deep the relationship began to be, because even though I was kind of excited about him, of course he made it. I'm almost sure that he understood how he could see that I was a little bit, I kind of liked him or whatever. I'm almost sure he saw that because I wasn't like a person who could hide things that well, and I didn't even know how to hide things. But he kind of showed me that we're brothers and we're going to be brothers, and I respected him for that. And we were working as brothers, and that's how it was, and that helped me out very much. And my world was his. I just I let him take care of Lamont. I mean, he was the boss now, he was showing me a lot about life, a lot about how to work on my own. Anyway, that's how deep the thing was. The reason why it's very important because I have to show you how deep the relationship was. And like I said, I understood his wife, and we all got along very well together. And when she referred to me, his wife would say, "Your brother," It was seriously brother. He was serious about, which I love him for that, because he was serious about me being his brother, because he had a brother that passed away, and he always said that I reminded me of him. That's another point too. So he definitely took care of me. And there's one last point I want to point about, oh yeah, I did not know that he was a Jehovah's Witness, I was a Jehovah's Witness, but when you're Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to be very careful if you don't agree with, if you want to get out to Jehovah's Witnesses. So we were very careful about that. I think he was very careful, because if you make a mistake and show someone that you don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness, or show someone that you're not really in, you could be lagging, not going to the meetings, but whatever you do, don't say that you don't like the organization or you're an apostate or something like that. So he was very careful about that. I didn't realize that in the beginning that he didn't really appreciate the organization. He always showed me that he was in love with the organization until we really, really, really got to know each other very well. So we worked together years and years. And just to show you how, not at the end of the thing, he ended up getting a divorce from his wife. He ended up getting his papers, and he wanted to start a business and move to Los Angeles. But he's another important part, because when I started dating my ex-wife, he knew her intentions, but he couldn't explain it to me because he knew how my mind was, and I wouldn't understand it. So one time before, the day before I was getting married, I went to his house. He was divorced at that point, and he had a lot of single people living with him. And I went to his room. He kind of rented out his apartment. And I went to his room, and he was telling me about his children. I mean, because now he was out. He didn't get this fellowship or anything. He just didn't want to be. He just threw the truth away or whatever. So he started having girlfriends and children, actually, from different women. And he was telling me about them. And at some point in time, I think he was very sleepy. And he got into bed, and I got into bed. We got in bed together. And we were just talking as brothers. And I remember I got excited and I wanted to tell him. I don't know why I wanted to tell him, but I just wanted to tell him, you know. And then I said, I want to tell you something. He goes, what? And I go, and then I decided, I said, no, I can't say anything. And he goes, no, tell me. I go, no, I'm not going to say anything. And he goes, tell me. And I go, no, I'm not going to say anything. And he stopped bugging me about it. Anyway, we started talking about what I said I have to get married tomorrow. And he goes, because he knew my ex-wife, the one that I was getting married to, and he knew what she was doing, but he couldn't tell me, because I would never understand. And he goes, I want you to do one thing for me. And I go, what? He goes, when you kiss the bride, make sure you kiss her again. I think he said, kiss her for me, or something like that. Or kiss her again. Kiss her once, but kiss her again for me. And it would be for him anyway, because if I kissed her twice, it would be because of him. You know what I mean? So I'm almost sure he said, when you kiss her a second time for me. And actually I did that. And when I kissed my ex-wife, when we got married, I kissed her again the second time. And she got mad. I could not believe it. And I was like, I didn't know if she was gonna burst out or whatever, but when I kissed her the second time, her face changed and everything. But anyway, so that's one of the persons, my Spanish brother. The second one is gonna be, I know this is gonna be a long YouTube, I'm very sorry, but this is important. It's important because if my family looks at this, then I don't have to explain anything to them. I just said, you know, they'll just look at, or they can look at the YouTubes in private, you know, and never say anything. But at least I can say I tried to help them. So anyway, my next one is when I was with my Spanish brother. One time I went into, this is the second person that helps me when I'm with my brother, which I'm going to talk about which I'm on the subject of getting, like I said, getting out the organization, okay? So this is still on the subject of getting out of the Jehovah Witness cult, okay? So these are the people that help me. So this other person is very important, even more so important, if not the same. When I'm with my Spanish brother, this is the beginning of the time when I formed this relationship with my Spanish brother. I go to the Kingdom Hall by myself, okay? And I walk into the Kingdom Hall, and you know, in the audience, everybody's facing the audience, so you look, and you're looking at the backs of people's heads. But I was always good at this when I was interested in somebody. I walk in the door, and as soon as I walk in the door, I see this beautiful lady. I noticed it right away. Like, it was like, there was all the people there, but my eye went right to her. And as soon as I saw her, I said, I have to meet her. So then after the congregation, after the meeting is over, we're in the back, and I meet her. And as soon as I meet her, it was love at first sight. I saw her from the back, and when I met her, I didn't even have to ask her for a phone number or anything. It was I can't explain to you love at first sight, but I'm pretty much old now, and I know that it was love at first sight, okay? And people don't believe in it. Maybe they don't believe in it because it doesn't happen that often, but it happened. When I saw her, it wasn't like, oh, I like her, oh, I love her. It wasn't anything like that. It was such a calm, beautiful feeling that you know that this person is with you and you're with that person. So we had a relationship as soon as we seen each other. It wasn't we didn't have to, you know how you go in a relationship and you have like these two things. You have one thing to where everything is like signs that the person gives, and then the other things is in reality what they do. And all the signs that you give, you can like reject them. You can reject them anytime, just as long as you don't put it in reality. So if a person comes up to you and they say, well, you looked at me, and I know you looked at me because you liked me, but you don't have to go along with that. You know what I mean? So that's how, I mean, like, that's how relationships are. I mean, regular relationship, to where you have to build up to it, and you have that nonverbal communication, which is reality, but everybody says it's not reality, but they cannot deny it anytime. And the reality is more like, okay, you call the person, you go see the person, you give that person a letter, you buy that person something, okay? It's nothing like that. It was nothing like that. We didn't have those two things, like that body language, and then the reality of asking her a number or waiting on the telephone. No, it was as soon as we seen each other, this was it. And my Spanish brother, I mean, I loved him dearly, but she took that spot. And that's how beautiful it was. And like I said, we didn't say, this is as time goes on. I mean, I'm talking about even after 3 months or the first week or the second week, we never said, I love you, I love you. It wasn't anything like that. It was true love. When we would hold hands, neither of us thought about, you know, like, oh, how long am I going to hold this person's hand? It was just so natural. When we walked, when I went to go see her, I left. I never thought about, I have to go, but I left when I had to leave. And it was not like I was leaving. I mean, she still was with me. Even when I left, when I was driving my car, I was thinking about her. So, you know, it's like things like that. It was definitely a beautiful love, okay? And it wasn't something that we always said, we loved each other, we loved each other. No, we did things together, but she was poor. I didn't realize that she was poor. She never talked about her problems. She never said that she needed to get married, which would have been a good idea for her to say that. But she never talked about getting married. But anyway, now we have to move on with this. I have to show you how deep it was. One time, this is the second place she lived. Like I said, she moved like several times. I met her mother, of course, when she was living with her mother. And then after that, she moved, and she's a Jehovah's Witness. I must say that she was a pioneer. That's a thing that you must keep in mind. She was a pioneer, and I really didn't care about the aspect that she was a pioneer. But she would clean as far as working is concerned. But she never talked about her problems too much. When she would move, she would just tell me she moved. But this is one time I went to a book study with her. It was a Spanish book study. And I left, and I was with her, of course, sitting with her. And I usually wait until everybody leaves. Everybody left, and I was still talking with her. And she was living with an older sister, very old sister back then. And the sister would let us, you know, talk. She would go in her room, and me and this beautiful woman would sit down and talk. Beautiful conversations. And one time I was getting ready to leave, and the door was cracked, and she pulled me back, and she gave me a kiss. And it was like the 4th, I'm not kidding you, it was like the 4th of July. I wouldn't lie. I saw like firecrackers like the 4th of July. I mean, like I was in the 4th of July in the field with all the firecrackers going up. I could not believe it. I mean, fireworks. And I could not believe the kiss. And then I left. That's the truth. And then I walked down the stairs. I didn't want her to know how much what it had done to me. And I walked out the door and I waited until she couldn't see me and I jumped up. I was the happiest person in the whole world. Okay, so then it's like that. So then one time, time is going pretty fast. I'm jumping and I'm jumping. So one time, we sit at this restaurant. This is to tell you how naive I was and I didn't know too many things. We're in the restaurant and we're having wine and I'm having a drink. And she tells me, I have to say this for her if she looks at this. And she tells me, she goes, you know, Lamont, I have to tell you because it shows you how naive I was and how much we both didn't know. And she goes, I want you to be the one to break my hymen. And I was like, what? And she goes, I want you to be the one to break my hymen. And I still didn't understand. So this leads to a point, I'm gonna go a little bit off a tangent. It's like, the reason why I was so stupid about sex was one thing, like when I was coming up in school, the only opportunity we had to learn about sex was through school. And my mother, and they gave us a release form at our school, it was in New York, did we want to learn about sex education or not? And I had to bring the note to my mother, and I was praying that she would say, you know, that she would put yes, and my mother put no on this note. And she explained to me, only thing she would explain to me about sex was wet dreams, which I had. So that's the only thing she explained to me about. So it was me and Annette Obano, who was in, the only 2 children that was in, had to go to the home economics room while everybody else was being educated about sex. So, and then there was no other way for me to learn. So anyway, I'm going back to the story. So she explains to me that, and that was something really, really beautiful for her to say that. Anyway, I had to keep asking her until she finally broke it down to me. And when she broke it down to me, it was like, you know, I want you to be the first person that I'm with. But I was thinking, still at that point, I didn't care. I mean, I didn't know the significance of being someone's first time. You know, I didn't catch that significance at all. But when she explained it to me and I understood, it was like, of course, I mean, because like being a Jehovah's Witness, you're in the present time. You can't really think, you can't really think ahead of time, you know. I didn't. So I just always thought that we would be together because we were in such this beautiful place, you know. And that's how it was. And that's how close we were. And I can go on and on about her, but that's how beautiful it was. And, but anyway, something happens. So, one time she was going to work. One time, now I'm going to speak about some things that I don't think it broke the relationship, but hindered us. One time I picked her up from work, and she looked different. I mean, when you see somebody in makeup all the time, to me, I saw her in makeup all the time. And then I picked her up at work where she was cleaning this house. And her was disheveled, how can I say that? Just kind of like, you know, like her hair was kind of not like it always had been. She didn't have like all the makeup on. She had like a shirt on and pants. She never wore pants. And that aroused me. It was the most beautiful thing that I could ever think of. I mean, to see somebody all the time dressed up, and then someone that you care about so much, and then to see them in that kind of condition, I was like blown away. And we were driving and she knew I was. We both could feel the heat, you know. It was the admiration. I can't say heat. It wasn't, maybe it was sex, but it was more like we loved each other so much, you know. We were for each other. It wasn't a different thing. You have to understand love at first sight first. And a true love at first sight. And we were driving and we couldn't talk. So we were driving and then I pulled into an alley. I pulled into an alley. It was dark, no lights. And I got on top of her. And she wanted, we both were together. But she had pants on, I had pants on. We both didn't, know anything. And we masturbated each other. We both were satisfied. It was a beautiful thing. Very, very beautiful. I was looking at the way her pelvis or hips were moving. So anyway, afterwards, something strange happened. My mind went to the governing body. And I got out the car slowly and I walked toward the street where the light was, where the street light was, and I kept thinking about the governing body. And I said, to this day, I could see myself looking up at the governing body, a big GB in my mind, like the governing body, the governing body. I kept saying the governing body. And it was so funny, but now I can see I wasn't even guilty. I wasn't anything. The only thing I could think of was the governing body. I felt bad about the governing body. And she came out of the car and she came and stood by me. I didn't feel anything different about her, but we both were thinking that way, I guess, We felt bad, okay? But we didn't feel different about each other. So anyway, we got back in the car and treated her the same way. The things about it is I didn't understand what was happening, If I only knew what was going on, we could have continued from there. So anyway, it wasn't too far from her house, to her apartment. I drove to her apartment and we got out the car. I didn't let her, I walked her up and she had to sit on the stairs, going to her apartment. She sat on the stairs and I kind of like was walking back and forth to her like we had committed some, I don't know. But we kept thinking, I don't know what she was thinking, but we kind of like we were kind of like separate in our minds. She was thinking about, what she felt was wrong, and I was thinking about how I felt was wrong. But the funny thing is that we didn't think anything bad about each other, and that's the thing that I could see. But like I said, I could never work that out. So anyway, that was one thing, and then something else happened. I don't know if it had anything to do with it, but she gave me a call one time, and she said, I don't know if she's torturing herself or whatever, but she said she wanted to go where the need was greater. I don't think that incident that I told you affected us because we never talked about it, and after it wore off, it was like I never thought about it again. But this is something that I think caused the relationship bad. She called me and she said she wanted to go where the need was greater. And I didn't want her to go, but I understood that she needed to go, that she wanted to go. She wanted to go to Iowa where the need was greater. I mean, I had no understanding of why anybody would want to do that, but she wanted to do it. I was a Jehovah Witness, so I was like, okay, But now, at first I thought I was upset or anything, but now I remember that I wasn't, because it was really sad that this woman was so beautiful and had a relationship and had to sacrifice it because she wanted to go to Iowa where the need was greater. It didn't make any sense. But that's the sad part. One of the sad parts about us being that Jehovah's Witness, in the Jehovah's Witness relationship. Being in a relationship and being a Jehovah's Witness. So the reason why I know that that didn't affect me, but the only thing about it is that I wasn't too smart and I didn't know that it would affect the relationship. But one time because I was living at home, and one time she called me and she says, another thing too, she never told me about her suffering. She never explained to me about her suffering. Maybe because she knew that I didn't know what was going on anyway, that I wouldn't understand. She called me and she goes, Lamont, I want you to come here. And I was at home, and where she lived was 40 minutes away. Never did I think about how far it was or anything. I was just happy that she wanted me to go there. So I got in my car and I drove all the way there. And when I got there, it took 40 minutes, so far away. And when I got there, she goes, I got into the living room and she goes, I just wanted to tell you that I love you. And I said, that's what you have me for? And I thought it was so beautiful. And we talked and we were saying goodbye, actually, And I was trying to get to understand why she wanted to go to Iowa. And like I said, she was a pioneer and that was in her mind. And she told me to wait in the kitchen, and I waited in the kitchen. And she went to go get me a chain. She put a chain around my neck. And it was so beautiful. However, when she left, it just deteriorated. Our relationship deteriorated. And Jenny and my ex-wife came involved. Anyway, that's the two people. I had to show respect for her because I would have to say I still love this person. I never forgot that, And the only thing I can say that happened to us was my stupidity and the fact that I was very naive and I didn't understand a lot of things. So those two people are very important. I can't just mention them in the next video and not show how important they are. And if they do see it, I needed to show them how much I love them both, and especially the lady that I'm talking about, because she's in my next YouTube, and she helps me, and it's something else. That's the most beautiful person that I knew. I need to let her know that. So anyway, so I told you all about that before we talk. Now I'm going to see if I could just say goodbye to everybody and good night. But that was beautiful for me to think about that person. Okay. Before I talk back about the world, okay, so now the next YouTube I'm going to get into, I told you about the two people. Okay, now as far as my next is YouTube, I go into my next YouTube. It's still about that subject I was telling you about, getting out of the Jehovah's Witness cult. I told you about the two people that are mentioned in there. I show respect to them because I mentioned them, okay? Because I just don't want to mention them real quick in the next one. And then I have to say that I had I had a band in Philadelphia. I wanted to tell you it was very important. It's also very important for those who's trying to leave the Jehovah's Witness cult, that you have something in your mind, something that you believe in the world. That's in the world. Yeah, have something in your mind that's in the world that you like to do, something good, okay? Mine was music, and that's what helped me out, because I was a part of the world, okay? At first I had a band, I had a manager, and he loved my music, but he told me that, this is before I got this fellowship, he told me that my music was before my time. And now I can see, because it's almost like trap. It's like the next level after trap music, okay? So But even though he told me that, and even though he told me that, he introduced me to these band members. It was in Philadelphia. He drove me to Philadelphia with him and his girlfriend. She loved my music. She played my music all the way to Philadelphia when we were driving. And he introduced me to musicians. And so on Wednesdays, I would go to Philadelphia on train to rehearse with my band. Okay, so that's one thing I was doing while I was at my brother's house. To go back to my brother's house the second time, I needed to let you know that. So I told you that, and I told you everything. So that's it for today. Um, it was good because I thought about people that meant so much to me. You know what I mean? And I want you to see that your lives, or whoever's listening, it's no different from anybody else's in the world. I mean, you might be in the truth, but your thoughts and the things you want to do are no different from those in the world. And I'm going to explain also that some parts of the world, being in the world, is actually safer than being a Jehovah Witness. Because on my next YouTube, it shows how some things that happened to me in the truth, and I'll say the truth, you know what I'm talking about. Some things that happened to me in the truth never, and I tell you, will not happen to you in the world, because God will have your back in the world. He has your back. Okay, and that's what I want to stress to everyone. Thank you very much, everyone. I enjoyed this one. Actually, I enjoyed this one the most. Actually, last week I did have so many things that was on my mind, but I still did it. But this one was the most encouraging to me, actually. And thank you all, and I hope you keep in touch. Thanks for everybody who subscribes, and thanks for everybody who listens, okay? And I know everybody doesn't agree with me. I know everybody doesn't like, you know, the things that I say. Even in life, I'm like that, you know. I understand that, you know, everybody doesn't like everything that I like. I don't like everything that everybody else likes. But thank you all very much. I just thank so much. And see you next week. Next week, like I said, I want to do, okay, it's going to be, I'm just going to say the title and then I'll go. Getting out of the Jehovah Witness cult. And this is when I go back to my brother's house. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.